Welcome to Watch, Review, Repeat. This is the podcast where two best friends discuss the latest in film and television and then do it all over again the following week. My name is Colton Brown, and joining me is Andrew Meadows.
I'm here in the flesh, the virtual flesh for all that are listening and not seeing the physical flesh, but I am here in the flesh, I promise.
I can confirm
I have flesh.
through the interwebs. I can see that Andrew is in fact in the flesh. So yes, welcome everyone to another episode of Watch, Review, Repeat. We've got a special one on tap for our listeners, where we're kind of working our way through kind of the last segments of the things that we wanted to do to kind of close out 2020. I know we're in 2021, but let's be honest, it still feels like 2020 in many ways. But we put up our episode on Tenet, I guess last week, probably by the time you're listening to this. So hopefully everyone enjoyed our coverage of Tenet. You know, that was months delayed from its theatrical debut. So that was fun to record on and have Anna on with us to talk about Tenet. And so it just kind of worked out to do it as a bonus episode and, have a little bit of a shelf life there for our Patreon supporters, and then have it up for our regular listeners fairly soon after. So yes, I think we can say that more bonus episodes will be coming on the horizon. It was intended to be kind of a make good kind of thing. I think we had promised that there would be a bonus episode by February 1st, and God damn it, we got it out in the middle of January and out to our regular listeners before the end of January too. So yeah, look forward to more bonus episodes on the horizon. This episode in particular, we are not treating as a bonus episode in the sense that we're not doing it as a timed exclusive release, but for all intents and purposes, this is kind of a bonus episode in many ways. For this episode, we are doing a kind of special retrospective on the filmography, the career of Chadwick Boseman. It's something we've talked about doing for quite literally months now, and just hadn't gotten around to doing, but we kind of made a concerted effort over the past week to sit down and watch a few of Chadwick's films, including his final film performance in Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, and we've now assembled tonight to talk about some of the amazing performances that Chadwick Boseman put on the screen in just a few of his films and his very short-lived career, and unfortunately short-lived career. So yeah, it's a Chadwick Boseman special. So we won't be doing news. We won't really be doing catching up or anything later on. We will basically be talking about 6 movies more or less. But before we do that, we're not going to do a fun fact per se. But I think that it's probably good to just kind of talk about Chadwick Boseman in some more general terms, just to get an idea of who he was as a person, as an actor, and kind of talk about what it is about Chadwick Boseman that, even months later after his passing, we're still saying, we need to talk about this man. We need to talk about the performances that he contributed to the world, because he had a huge impact on, I think, both Andrew and myself, and obviously on millions of people, I have to imagine,
from a single
throughout the
role,
country, throughout the world, from Black Panther alone, certainly, and for other roles too, and some other roles that Andrew and I probably hadn't seen him in until we kind of took the time to watch him in this.
He was a bright burning flame, as short as that flame was. You know what I mean? I don't know how to quite express it as eloquently as I should be able to express it. But his career and his legacy, the films that he performed in and left behind. I had no idea about these films too, other than, this episode was the introduction into these movies that he performed in, and the performances that he put forth in these movies, you can see how he culminated his career path to the Black Panther. You know what I mean? It's easy to see. what an incredible legacy he's leaving behind. I mean, it's what a dude, man. I don't know how to put it.
I think "What a Dude, Man" is honestly a decent way of doing it. I mean, it isn't. I mean, what I'll say is when we're talking about these movies, we'll talk about the quality of the films themselves, things that stood out in those films, but we're really turning our attention towards what Chadwick contributed in each of those roles, and some of those roles, there's some crossover in terms of what he brought to the table. And some, it's a totally left field, complete opposite. From what we've seen from him, from what we know, certainly from his his performances as T'Challa, as the Black Panther, and the films that character appeared in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It's going to be interesting to talk about because
it makes me feel good in my heart that he got to see the pinnacle of his career and the impact it had in the world based on his past performances. You know what I mean? Does that make sense? Like he could, I don't know, man. He's just a real, I mean, the roles that he played in these movies that we're going to talk about, the majority of them anyways, the vast majority of the roles that he played, were truly like just impactful, thought-provoking films. And his role in those films, contributed to that. I mean, it's super good shit. We're in for some super good shit. I'll just put it that way. I'm not good when I try to talk eloquently with big words. So we'll just say we're in for some super good shit and some super good conversation. I'm excited to talk about it.
Yes, me too. So, just to say a few words about kind of who he is, who he was. Chadwick Boseman was born November of 1976. Unfortunately, he passed away August 28th of 2020, this past year. So, like I said, it's been a few months since that happened, and it still kind of feels like getting the news happened yesterday, a couple days ago. I mean, it's still kind of a raw sensation to think that we're not going to see another performance from him. I mean, we had the opportunity, obviously, with one of the movies we're going to talk about today, to see his final film performance, to see new performances from him, and and a lot of the movies we were seeing for the first time, of course, so those were new to us, but had been years old. But there's something about knowing that he died that really elevates kind of what his performances mean. I think when you're watching these things, I did want to go ahead and just read out the statement that they posted on his social media accounts after he passed away. I know when this news dropped, we obviously talked about it on the podcast, so none of this is going to be new news for anyone, but I think it's important to talk about because it's a really, it just puts a lot of things in perspective, and I think talking about how he died kind of informs, especially those later film roles, how much he put into those things, and it's just awe-inspiring, impressive, and saddening, and all kind of the same breath. But it is with immeasurable grief that we confirm the passing of Chadwick Boseman. Chadwick was diagnosed with stage 3 colon cancer in 2016 and battled with it these last 4 years as it progressed to stage 4. A true fighter, Chadwick persevered through it all and brought you many of the films you have come to love so much. From Marshall to *To Five Bloods*, August Wilson's Ma Rainey's *Black Bottom*, and several more, all were filmed during and between countless surgeries and chemotherapy. It was the honor of his career to bring King T'Challa to life in *Black Panther*. He died in his home and with his wife and family by his side. The family thanks you for your love and prayers and asks that you continue to respect their privacy during this difficult time. So that's kind of setting the stage of why we are here in a way, because this is a man who worked through stage 4 cancer. I mean, quite literally, some serious adversity to give everything that he had in him into these roles, and putting it on display for audiences to enjoy and to just to see it kind of all laid out. It's just something that's insanely impressive. And, before and after illness, basically, Chadwick always put in the work, and it always kind of showed in the final product. So I just think it's incredibly impressive. I think I think it's just worth kind of, putting that out there as almost kind of a first note of that's the kind of person that Chadwick Boseman was, someone that was so dedicated to his craft that he worked through complications of cancer, colon cancer at that, for years and years, and continued to just bring us quality product after quality products between Black Panther and some of the performances that we're going to talk about on this episode. So what I will also say is that, he obviously means a lot for people. It means a lot for Black people, I think, particularly in this country, in the terms of, he came to embody, some major historical figures for the Black community, some of which we'll talk about again in some of these movies. But more than that, he was just a Black actor who just owned it. I mean, taking Black Panther from a fairly well-known comic character, but not the most groundbreaking. Not your Spider-Man, not your Batman. Taking that and bringing that to $700 million gross in America, and over $1 billion gross, and and worldwide. Basically taking that character and using his performance, and obviously he was surrounded by an amazing cast. We'll talk about it, but that's just kind of one small example of what it means to have someone like Chadwick Boseman, and a generational talent perhaps, and one who's Black and who was given the opportunity to just put it all on the line and show people like what is capable. What people can be capable of in terms of just acting prowess and performances, and those sorts of opportunities that had traditionally for many years been reserved for people not of color, which is to say white people, you know what I mean? So obviously we like to think that society has evolved and we're a little better about these things. We're not perfect. We're far from it. But someone like Chadwick really does show that, it's possible. We're slowly making progress on this front, and to have someone like Chadwick Boseman, who, unfortunately was only able to kind of act for about a decade. Imagine if he could, leave behind the sort of legacy that someone like Denzel Washington has. It was another actor who Chadwick credits for basically him being successful is that, I think he at one point said there's no Black Panther without Denzel Washington, and not just because of me, but my whole cast. That generation stands on his shoulders. That's the sort of thing where he's the kind of performer that you need to take you into the, to break down those barriers in Hollywood and let these kind of performances, stand out and be recognized, and have something like Black Panther, and have anything like, any of the other movies that he was in, just kind of.
And to put it in perspective, he was diagnosed with stage 3 colon cancer in 2016, which means 3 out of the 6 movies. So half of the movies that we're covering tonight. 1, 2, 3. Am I counting right here?
I think 4. I think four of the 6 movies.
4 of the 6 movies that we're covering tonight were after he was diagnosed with stage 3 colon cancer, after he started chemo, after he started surgeries. It's just awe-inspiring. It's incredible.
So yeah, I think just to kind of quickly summarize, and then we'll move on to talking about these movies and Chadwick Boseman's performances in them. This is a man who, for 4 years, had the fight of his life. He unfortunately lost that fight, but he left behind an honestly awe-inspiring legacy of performances and some truly good films. Obviously, you can have a good performance in a bad film, and you can have a bad performance in a good film, but the bulk of his filmography is really just impressive, pretty much from top to bottom.
And they're of the Black experience in America, for the most. I mean,
right.
You know what I mean, and that's what's incredible about the movies that he set up in his legacy. I mean, they're of.
I mean, he's playing. He's playing, historical figures who were groundbreaking and broke barriers, and, your Jackie Robinsons, your Thurgood Marshalls, like, even your James Browns, who is not the finest person in the world, but, broke barriers, and, he still deserves credit for kind of the role he played in the music scene. So, taking these characters and and it just, we'll talk about each of them obviously, but yeah, that sort of thing. And then you go to the next step and you take a fictional character like Black Panther and make that your, Black Panther is Chadwick Boseman, and Chadwick Boseman is the Black Panther. You know what I mean? Like, that's the sort of thing that he did with every role. And even in some of those, 21 Bridges, not the most exciting movie. We'll talk about it. He still owned that role. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just everything about him as a person to me is just.
And it's interesting. Amazing. We'll get to it. But the 3 films that precede Black Panther, in a way, they culminated what we see in Black Panther and what Black Panther stands for. And it's fucking cool, man. It's really good. What a career. What a career. I don't know. We'll get into it, I guess, or maybe we're getting into it now. I don't know. But man, I don't know how to put into words how it made me feel watching these movies. And I didn't, to be completely honest, I didn't rewatch the Black Panther. I just didn't have time. I couldn't find the time to do it.
You've seen it enough times. We've covered it on the podcast already twice. So,
yeah, but it's
a mainstay for us, obviously, but
it puts a lens on it. Like watching it again, I really need to watch it again because seeing the build up in his career to Black Panther, which is like it's still the most successful Marvel movie.
I mean, I think Endgame is technically there, but who's in that, so.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, Black Panther broke a ceiling that is. I mean, it set the world on fire. I mean, it's its own thing. It's absolutely incredible. What that movie stands for, what the production crew of that movie stands for, what everything of that movie stands for is just it's absolutely incredible. And you can see the career path that Chadwick chose for himself. And the buildup of that. And like I said, it puts a different perspective on it. And then knowing how successful that movie was when it came out, it really does fill my heart with joy knowing that he got to experience that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I agree with that. So we're not going to cover every role that Chadwick performed. We are going to be covering 6 movies for the purposes of this episode. So we're going to be covering basically in release order of those 6 movies that we've kind of curated. And we curated them to be lead roles. This is Chadwick Boseman, leading the show basically. So we're going to cover 42, Get On Up, Marshall, Black Panther, 21 Bridges, and then his final performance in Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. So that's kind of what we're going to do, which is to say, there are some other performances that we've talked about on this podcast before, or at least the movies we've talked about, and I feel like invariably we've talked about his role in them. Captain America Civil War, the introduction of the character of Black Panther is a big one. To Five Bloods we talked about early in 2020, right. Where he is not necessarily one of the main characters, but, he's not the lead character, we'll say. But his role is integral to that film, and he's a huge part of that film, and he's great in that film.
And the through line of what his roles are in each of the movies he plays in, at least the movies that I've been exposed to with Chadwick in them, is a through line for his career. You know what I mean? It's cool. It's cool.
Yeah, I mean, if I had to say anything, I think there's really only one blemish on his filmography, and that is that he appeared in Gods of Egypt, which is apparently terrible. I never saw it, to be fair. But, the man is allowed to take a paycheck, or, maybe honestly, he probably put his all into that, and maybe the project just didn't work. I didn't see it, like I said, so maybe it's unfair for me to kind of pick on it particularly, but,
it looked pretty bad.
I bet he was good in it. I bet it was a bad movie, but like I said, you can have good performances in bad movies, and I'd be willing to bet that, even if he was there for the paycheck, even if he was there to ham it up, whatever it was for that movie, it was probably appropriate for that movie.
At the same time, when was that movie released, Gods of Egypt?
That was 2016. I'm looking at it now, so anyway. We don't need to dwell on Gods of Egypt. It's not on the 6 that we mentioned.
Maybe it should have been.
Maybe we should go back. But But yeah, we're owning in on kind of 6 lead performances from Chadwick Boseman, kind of throughout his career. I mean, he started on TV for the most part. Lincoln Heights, I think we had a big role on it. Persons Unknown, I think, had a big role on it. Apparently, he was in an episode of Justified, which means that that's probably the first time I technically saw him act. I have no recollection of it happening. But 42, I think 42 is kind of where Chadwick Boseman hits the scene for many people. For most people, I would say. 42 is a 2013 film, came out April of 2013, that was written and directed by Brian Helgeland. It stars, of course, Chadwick Boseman, Harrison Ford, Nicole Beharie, Andre Holland, Christopher Maloney, and Alan Tudyk. Look, you probably, you should know what some of these things are, but maybe you don't. So 42, after signing with the Brooklyn Dodgers in 1947, Jackie Robinson faces considerable racism while becoming the first African-American to play Major League Baseball in the modern era. So this, I believe, was your first time seeing 42.
It was.
Is that accurate? Okay.
Didn't hear about it, didn't know about it, and it blew my mind. I thought it was a ridiculously good film. I mean, of course, it had Chadwick. It had an excellent performance from Chadwick. But, man, what a movie. What an excellent movie this movie was. It always... it's probably my own... it's my own ignorance. I would say this is a white privilege thing, I guess, but it always sets me back. It doesn't matter what movie I'm watching. To be completely honest, I cry fucking with every movie. I'll be honest with you, I cry with every movie, but it always makes me so upset to see the world that people lived in 50 years ago, 60 years ago. You know what I mean? To be in to experience the things that people had to experience, black people in particularly, what they had to experience only 60 years ago. I told Sarah, we were watching this movie together, our grandparents grew up in this world.
Yeah. And
it breaks my heart. Like, it's terrible. And this movie really sheds a light on what it is to be a black person in the 40s, and what a remarkable performance Chadwick put in. So I think that this is it's an athletic performance for sure. It's a kinetic experience. I think it was very well directed. But the performances overall were great. I thought Harrison Ford was awesome. I love Harrison Ford. Anytime I get me some Harrison Ford. But Chadwick in particular, he did a very good job of I don't know, man. Just his performance was powerful in this movie, I thought. And I thought that the overall film, the direction of the film, kudos to Brian Helgeland.
Yeah, that's good enough. That's probably. I don't even know if I said it properly, so I'm just going to defer to whatever you say. It's fine.
Yeah, kudos to him because he had a, I think more so than any of the maybe not all the movies that we're going to talk about. Probably not all of them. I'd say there's probably 2 other ones in here that we're going to talk about that were well as well directed as his film. But we all know that I struggle with the excitement of baseball. Well,
yes,
you and I know anyways.
It's come up before, certainly.
Yes, but this film did a very good job of get me hyped up to watch some baseball. You know what I mean? And to be fair, I think baseball definitely seems to be played differently than it was then. It's especially with Jackie Robinson and how he plays baseball. But the movie's far more than a sports film, I think. It's about the hurdles that Jackie Robinson had to jump in order to be a legend in the baseball realm. You know what I mean? And and more so than just a baseball player, but what he did for Black Americans. You know what I mean? And what he stood for. And Chadwick did an excellent job of those of portraying those adversities. It was he nailed it. And I think I'll be saying that as we progress through these movies.
He nailed it. That's going to be it. It's going to be a recurring theme. Yes, that's true.
He nailed it. This is 42 really blew my mind. Like I really wish I had watched it earlier.
Yeah.
Anytime I bring it up, I've been bringing it up a lot. When I watch something really good like this, I tend to bring it up a lot. And a lot of people say they've already seen it. And they say it was really good. And I was like, oh, the fuck did I miss it? You know?
Yeah.
But I did miss it, and I regret missing it. But I am glad I experienced it because I had a really good time with this movie. It was very good.
Yeah. So before I proceed any further, I forgot to flag it already. We're going to do full spoilers for all of these. Most of these are years old at this point. Some are about historical figures. Surprise, surprise, Jackie Robinson, signs and plays with the Dodgers for a while and has a pretty good career, you might say. Has an amazing career. I think.
What a baseball player, dude! What a fucking baseball player, right?
Fantastic, one of the best. I think the only player who has had his number retired in all of baseball. Like every team has retired the number 42 in baseball. They celebrate Jackie Robinson Day every year. You know, Jackie Robinson is one of, if not the most important players in all of baseball and in the history of baseball. And I'm a baseball guy. Andrew's not, obviously, but I think regardless of your feelings on baseball, you still know who Jackie Robinson is. Or at least
absolutely.
You've heard of Jackie Robinson. You know, Jackie Robinson is that guy that broke barriers, in a time of segregation in America. Just a hugely important historical person.
It's worth mentioning Harris, the manager of the Dodgers, the owner of the Dodgers, I guess is what it would be. It wouldn't be the manager. Yeah. I don't know anything about that man. I just know about Harrison Ford's character, and I can't remember his name because it's been a couple of days.
Branch Rickey's the character.
Yeah, that fucking guy, dude. That guy who was willing to take death threats and to do what he thought was right. I mean, that's you know what I mean? It takes people like that to do things. And yeah, Harrison Ford character was awesome, and Harrison Ford fucking nailed it. One of my favorite sequences in the whole movie was when he was talking on the phone with the guy with the I think it was the Phillies. The owner of the Phillies is like, we're not going to play baseball with you because you got Jackie on your team, and he's like, what would God think of you? You're going to tell God that you didn't want to play baseball because you were playing against somebody that was black? Is that good enough? And it was oh man, what a good movie. That was a fucking good movie. Anyways,
I agree.
I'm sorry.
Oh, that's quite all right. I like when you get animated. It's fun. I saw this when it came out in theaters, actually. I did see it then, but I had not seen it since then. So, it's a good...
It's been a long time.
7 to 8 year, somewhere between 7 and 8 year gap from first viewing to second viewing. And I enjoyed it the first time, and I thought it was excellent the second time as well. So,
brought tears to my eyes. This movie did.
It's a powerful film. I think it's a well-made film. With a good cast across the board, and obviously, like I said, baseball's my thing. It's not really Andrew's, so I'm predisposed to a baseball movie. I love myself a good baseball movie, and this is kind of this is probably like a top-tier baseball film. It's a film that doesn't shy away from it being a baseball film. Like it's enjoyable from the aspect of it being a baseball film and watching the baseball sequences, but it's so much more than that because it's about a man, and it's about Jackie Robinson, who and kind of seeing who he was and what he had to endure to kind of break those barriers to become the first black Major League Baseball player in the modern era.
And it was a struggle. Like it was hard.
It was not easy. Yes, it was. And it's, I mean, credit is, Chadwick Boseman just is that character. He just became that character.
He nails a he nails a character that's fueled by, he's just fired up. Like he's fired up. He's short fused, and he's passionate. And that's one thing that throughout the movies that we're going to talk about, he portrays passionate characters. And in this particular film, there's people that egg him on, like fucking Alan Tudyk. Alan Tudyk was a fucking dick. God dang.
That's that scene of him on the field taunting.
Oh, it was
Jackie
terrible. Fuck.
It's one of the worst things ever like committed to film. And obviously, like, I don't mean worst in the sense of like this is bad, but it's
potent. Like you'd want to punch him in the face. Like it irks you while you're watching it. You know what I mean? Imagine if you were on the baseball field and you can't hit the fucking baseball right because this fucking dick behind you. God.
Imagine if you're Jackie Robinson and you're listening to this shit. I mean, you know, just some of the most hateful language just being thrown at you. And, you know, I think this movie is about the resilience of someone like Jackie Robinson, that type of person, you know, I think they kind of make the point of like, it has, you know, you have to do it the right way. And it's such a shitty thing. Like he would be well within his rights to fucking clock Alan Tudyk in his face, you know, and like, you know, but if he does that, then it's all over. The dominoes fall, and that's it. You know, who knows honestly what baseball looks like if Jackie just says fuck it, I'm gonna take this baseball bat and beat the shit out of this guy because he deserves it, and he did. But
it undoes everything that what he was trying to accomplish. It undoes what he stood for.
Yeah, I mean, yes, basically. I mean, it does, and you know, it's such a horrible thing to kind of put it that way, but that's how it was in the 1940s, which yes, is in pretty recent memory. We weren't alive for it, but you know, a lot of people that still walk this earth,
a lot of people that still vote,
a lot of people that still vote. In fact, probably it's more people that still vote. Well, I don't know. We're getting to this point where it's
yeah, well, I mean,
it's closer to 70, 80s years at this point, but you know, it's still, yeah. It's not that far away. It's the not too distant past.
Which
but
is
yeah, you
terrible to think about. Think about that.
Yeah, it's.
I mean, it's one or two generations past. I mean, it's not far.
We are not obviously in a perfect world. You know, we still have rampant issues of racism that plague this country, this whole world. Things are definitely better than they were, but you know, we've got so much progress that is still to be made, and the short span of time, really, you know, in the scheme of things, from something like this happening to now, just kind of highlights like just some of the horrendous things that have kind of happened to people.
And these movies, the movies that Chadwick Boseman made, help progress humanity. I really feel like that.
Yeah, you know, I think that. Look, I mean, I think I made the point of saying like everyone knows who Jackie Robinson is, but like they don't know Jackie Robinson's story, probably. You know, like, you know, to a certain extent, and it's movies like this, it's performances like Chadwick's in this movie that show the kind of person. You know, and it's easy for us to say, and I think a lot of people would sympathize with the fact, like, fuck that. I'm not going to just, you know, bite my tongue when this guy is calling me the N-word left and right while I'm trying to just fucking play baseball. You know what I mean? But, like, that was kind of
one of the things that broke my heart
needed to happen at that exact moment.
One of the white characters says, "Hey, listen, I just want to go and play baseball. That's all I want to do." You don't think that's what Jackie wants to do? You don't think he just wants to play baseball?
Right.
And it's like, fuck, man. Yeah. Anyways, what a movie. Great movie. If you haven't seen it, even if you're not a baseball person, 110% go see or look up and watch 42. I think I had to rent it. I think I rented it on Apple TV.
Yeah, unfortunately, this one doesn't seem to be streaming at present, but I got the Blu-ray for $5, so like you can get it for pretty cheap. You can rent it for like $3 or $4, I think, on Amazon, iTunes, whatever the case may be. So it's accessible, but it's well worth your time. I agree with that. And and watch it for Chadwick's performance in this. I think Andrew's kind of hit on a lot of the same points that I would have made. Just the restraint that he has to, you see it in the performance. Just, the kind of rage that lurks underneath and the desire to lash out and basically retaliate for things that are unfairly, thrown at him. But for him to kind of grit his teeth and just go out there and play baseball, just the kind of, you can see it in his eyes throughout this movie, and just the subtle facial expressions of just, Jackie is one way away. Even the scene when he goes in the tunnel and just that, it's just such a raw moment when he smashes the bat against there. That's just all that pent up emotion and everything that he has to bottle up for basically being able to break this barrier. It's unfair to ask one person to bear the brunt of that. And yet Jackie Robinson is the person that did exactly that. And that shows capacity that, most of us probably don't have within us. That takes a very specific kind of person to be able to do that sort of thing. And, obviously this movie was made and released well before Chadwick got diagnosed, but that's one of those things. Chadwick Boseman had a 4-year battle with cancer, you know what I mean? And put everything into his work all through that time, basically up until his death. And to me, that's the kind of ethic and the work ethic and ethos that someone like Jackie Robinson had. I think Chadwick Boseman and Jackie Robinson, very
cut
different
from the same cloth.
Different, walks of life, obviously separated by decades and professions and stuff like that. But yeah, I think you can see that they are cut from the same cloth. I think that's a good way of putting it, And so it's for someone like Chadwick to embody this role as well as he did, even before his hardship specifically with cancer. He's a black man in America. You know what I mean? I think any black man in America is going to understand the struggle of, racism and white people, saying horrible shit to you, that's the reality for people today still, you know what I mean? And so that's what I mean when I say, we're better, but we're not there yet. We've got places to go. So yeah, I think it's a testament. This is the movie where you can see the inkling of Kevin Feige and company saying, oh shit, we got to get this guy.
That's our man.
This is Chadwick Boseman going on everyone's radar that sees this movie, and then it's the performances that follow that just continue that upward climb of his filmography. So yeah, I think that's 42. Shall we move on to Get On Up?
We shall move on to Get On Up.
So Get On Up was released just a year later, a little over a year later. August of 2014. Written by, I must say, the two most British fucking names in the world, Jez Butterworth and John Henry Butterworth. The two most British ass names I've ever heard in my life. Jez Butterworth, get the fuck out of here.
John fucking Henry Butterworth.
John Henry. Jez, have you finished your part of the script yet? Yes, John Henry.
John Henry Butterworth.
John Henry. Oh, good God. Directed by Tate Taylor, stars Chadwick Boseman, Nelson Ellis, Dan Aykroyd, Viola Davis, Craig Robinson, and Octavia Spencer. Here we have another historical figure. It's a chronicle of James Brown's rise from extreme poverty to becoming one of the most influential musicians in history. Get on up. Get on up now.
Get on!
Yeah. Oof. So Get On Up it's a hell of a ride. I'll say that. I think I enjoyed Get On Up, but
I enjoyed the shit out of Get On Up.
Yeah, okay, all right. Let's hear about it.
Okay, so Get On Up. I enjoyed the shit out of Get On Up. I thought I like James Brown by himself. I think he's an interesting character. I've always enjoyed his music. This movie isn't without its criticisms. I think the biggest qualm I had with this movie wasn't necessarily the writing or it certainly wasn't the acting.
No,
it was
not.
it was all the editing. which I guess could be. I mean, maybe the director. But I do think that this movie, once you get like halfway through the film, it's pretty jarring in the beginning. But I think once you get to the middle of the film, I think that it kind of either you get used to the cutting back and forth, the way it's edited, or the sections get longer, so there's more to grip your teeth into. But it's a very jarring movie to watch. By the end of the movie, I wholeheartedly think that I at least feel like I understood what they were going through, or not going through, but intending the audience to get and receive from the film. Because it cuts back and forth from James's childhood to his career, back and forth, and it's really it's a really jarring experience to watch. At least the beginning of the film is. And then, like I said, I think by the end of the film, I was like, oh, okay, I think I get it. You know what I mean? It's weird. I will say that Chadwick in this movie is 100% not recognizable. At least when he gets to old James Brown, he is not recognizable as Chadwick Boseman at all. Of course, you can see him in you can recognize him in younger the younger portion of James Brown's life, but when he gets to the older James Brown, I didn't recognize him at all. The beginning of the film is with old James Brown when he's strung out on coke and shit, and you can't recognize him at all. I'm like, holy shit, is that him? The performance that Chadwick Boseman lays down in this movie is absolutely fucking incredible. Through the entire movie, I think that this 42 was an impactful movie. 42 displayed Chadwick's athleticism. I think Get On Up displayed athleticism in the form of dancing. Chadwick had some ridiculous moves. Like he was fucking James Brown. He was James Brown in this movie, and I'm young enough to say that I don't know James Brown like a lot of people know James Brown, but I know James Brown was a funky dude, and Chadwick Boseman was a funky dude in this movie. He was moving. He displayed athleticism in this movie. But his performance in this movie was absolutely incredible, I thought. To embody such a real life person was just nuts. I've watched interviews with James Brown. I've seen performances of James Brown. And that's my extent of James Brown, but goddamn, I would not think that Chadwick Boseman was not James Brown. He nailed it. He fucking nailed it. But the editing was a little bit jarring. I thought it was a little bit funky, a little bit weird. But I think by the end of the movie, I can say that I understood it. I understood the editing process, and I understood what they were going for. I would not have done the same thing. I would not have made it that way. But I by the end of the film, I understood what they were going for, which I can say I did not understand what they were going for in the beginning of the film. So, what did you think about this movie?
Yeah. Once again, I think we're very much of similar footing. I was a little hesitant to commit to saying whether I enjoyed it.
I definitely enjoyed it.
I enjoyed it, but it is one of those things. So I actually kind of I watched it in two sittings. The first sitting was basically the first half hour, and I paused, and I'm like, I'm not really getting it. Like, you know what I mean? It was just kind of just like, this isn't really doing it for me. Like Chadwick is like owning it, and like he's a fucking different person in this movie, but like this movie is just not working for me on a fundamental level. And I went back. I went back and I finished the movie, in a second sitting, and I think it's absolutely true. The first 30 minutes minimally, maybe even the first 45, 50 minutes of this movie, it just sets up so many different points in life, and it's so quick to cut back and forth. It's just like, is there a plot to this movie? Like, what am I seeing? Like what's the point? What's the thrust? And it finally gets to it, and I think it does come to a head, I think, by the end of the film in terms of why they did it. It kind of has the cross-cutting and in sequences where you see, it's like the young, the kid, James, gets out of the car after the car chase at the end, just trying to show the different aspects, the different portions of James Brown's life and kind of how they all inform, the old whacked out James and kind of how it gotten to that point. I think the music is obviously great. It's James Brown, you know what I mean? So it's going to be good. It's going to be funky. It's going to be enjoyable to listen to. I think it's directed well enough. I think it's really just the editing that kind of throws it all out of whack and makes it hard to really settle into it, and certainly coming off the back of this was the second to last one that I watched, but coming off the back of watching minimally 42 and Marshall, which are, kind of biopics as well, but are very kind of traditional, more linear narratives. Like this was kind of just hard to get kind of in the rhythm of it, I would say. And but I think it gets there. I think it does get there at a certain point. It just takes a while to do that.
It doesn't linger on other characters. So
it's definitively about James. Yeah.
The big thing that drives James over the edge is the death of his son. They don't linger on the drug addiction, and they don't linger on his son. I didn't have enough exposure to James and his son to feel a whole lot after the death of his son. So I mean, this film is there is criticisms about this film. Like I said, there's not a lot of exposure to other characters. The second most exposed character I think you have is Bird, and
yes, yeah,
and that's kind of a shame because they set the film up with crazy lunatic James Brown, and then they go back to the car chase, and that you find out that the reason he's all whacked out and he's fucking nuts is because he's after the death of his son. But the problem is I didn't have a relationship with the son. I don't feel that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And in a lot of ways, the biggest thing that you feel about James is his unwillingness to be attached to other people. Yet, you know what I mean? So you feel that with Bird, and then at the end of the movie, he sings one of Bird's songs. And one of the first songs that he sings with Bird. You know what I mean? It's a big moment for him because you realize that James has grown as a person. Yet you don't feel what James felt after the death of his son and what leads him to getting arrested. You know what I mean? So I feel like there's a disconnect there. But other than that, the performance Chadwick put in was absolutely ridiculous.
Transformative.
Transformative. That's the best way to put it.
Yeah, I mean, he is unrecognizable. Even and obviously when he's buried in makeup and prosthetics, he's physically unrecognizable. The older James Brown stuff. Honestly, throughout most of the movie, the hair alone kind of makes him stand apart from any other movie that he kind of is that he's in, really, and especially of the ones that we're watching too. But yeah. The voice, I mean, the voice that he affected for this whole movie, I mean, I'm not even going to try to attempt it, but like, he just sounds like a different person. He moves like a different person. He yet again, as was the case, I think, with Jackie, and maybe Jackie and Chadwick were kind of closer, I think, in terms of people of who they were. I don't think Chadwick Boseman was very much like James Brown as a person.
No.
At least I hope not, he'll say. But goddamn, did he become James Brown for this film?
He did.
He was James Brown.
He was James Brown. It was totally, I think, out of all the movies we're going to be talking about, but maybe besides Black Panther, because in Black Panther he personifies an African man. You know what I mean? In this movie, he is completely 110. Like you said, it's transformative. It's nuts. I think this is one of his. Out of all the roles that he plays, I think that this role right here probably required the most work and dedication.
Yeah, I think I read that he spent maybe 2 months, like learning how to perform like James Brown, to do the like all the dancing, like it's him. He did that shit. You know what I mean? That's not some guy that they stuck in there with a pompadour on his head to disguise the fact that it wasn't, Chadwick. Like he put
did
the
it.
fucking work in. Like, yeah. I mean, that's just truly.
It's nuts. I mean, it's absolutely
nuts.
nuts.
It really is nuts. And I think the same thing with 42 even. Like, I think I read that, like, sometimes they had, like, a minor league baseball player that, like, would kind of be on the baseball field doing some of the baseball type scenes, and Chadwick would watch it and be like, that's not how Jackie did it. And so he'd go out and fucking do it himself because he had studied how Jackie would move and approach, playing the field, and just the way he would move and run. Like, just the attention to detail, like, some actors know when to do that, and some actors just don't give a shit about that. And Chadwick was certainly the kind of performer that, like, the little details mattered to him. And, like, this is a movie where the performance of James Brown is almost nothing but little details and, like, everything that he does. And, like, in spite of my faults, I think, with the film itself in terms of its construction, and I think I agree, the emotional impact, I think, is kind of lost because of kind of haphazard editing style that they went for. I always was drawn to watching Chadwick as James Brown. He was a magnetic, charismatic man the entire way through. And obviously, James Brown, the man, I think is not a good person, a domestic abuser, a few run-ins with the law kind of throughout, and we see some of them here. But you know what I mean? Like, but he cannot deny the presence of James Brown, and you cannot deny the presence that Chadwick brought in this role. And one thing I was thinking when I was watching this is, like, we've had a kind of rash of a couple musical biopics that have come out in the past few years. We had Bohemian, we had Rocket Man, there's probably one or two others that I can't think of right now. And I'm like, Rami Malek won an Oscar, like best actor for playing Freddie Mercury in Bohemian Rhapsody, which is a trash film. And, like, to me, that performance is a little bit of a caricature type thing. Like, to me, that was Rami Malek doing Freddie Mercury. I never for once thought, shit, man, Rami is Freddie. You know what I mean? Like, I never thought that.
You 100% feel.
Absolutely thought that Chadwick was James Brown in this. And, like, maybe I don't know as much about James Brown as I do about Freddie Mercury. I don't know that much about either of them, to be fair. I mean, I think it's a fair comparison.
But Chadwick...
movie, but that performance, I mean, he wasn't... I don't even think he was nominated for this fucking thing. And I'm like, are you serious? Like, how... What?
How does that fly under the radar, right?
That's insane. That's insane to me that, he...
And going back to the through line, I think is a through line through all these movies, we can all agree that James Brown had issues. I did not know about these issues before this movie. James Brown was a man full of pride and full of a lot of different issues, I think. But this movie does shed light on why those issues are present in an adult form. You know what I mean? And it sheds light on that a black person elevating himself. I mean, in not Jackie, but James says it at one point. I've worried about myself this whole time. It's all I've had was myself, or something along those lines. You know what I mean? And you can understand the struggle that James Brown had to be where he was at. You know what I mean? And the things that he was exposed to, and the things that he had to endure in order to become the person that we all know today. It's definitely you don't think about those things when I at least I don't think about those things when I listen to James Brown music, but you kind of do now, and I think it's interesting. Like at one point they're singing the song, I'm sorry, and they're like, hey, there's just a guy singing the same verse over and over, the same line over, the same lyric over and over and over again. This isn't music, blah 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 blah. But then you can understand what he's belting. You can understand why he's belting it and why he's singing it, and it sheds a different light on the music that you listen to because of Chadwick's fucking performance in this movie. Like, I don't think I can listen to James Brown music the same way, knowing the backstory and everything of James Brown. I think it's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, for me, this movie is more interesting as a series of vignettes, like about a person's life. Like it doesn't quite come together. I think in a way, I think clearly they wanted it to. I think I got what they were going for. I think, as you said, I don't think it totally worked for me. At the same time, it didn't
land, but I understood what they were going for.
But
in the beginning, I didn't even know what they were going for. Like it was so fucking scattered. I didn't know.
It was very, very jarring at the outset. But I think that and looking back at this film, like there are like 4 or 5 like individual scenes that I can point out and think that was pretty good. Like that was good, or that was hard hitting or impacting in some way. I keep going back to the fucking scene where he's a kid and he's in the boxing ring. Blindfolded and fighting other black children in front of a bunch of white people at like a country club. And apparently that's a real thing that actually happened. And like yet another example of how fucked up this country, I guess we'll say, was. But, I don't think that happens anymore. At least I certainly hope not. But, I mean, that's just insane to me that something like that is something that happened.
Our grandparents.
Basically. And beyond that, it's just even the scene when it stands out to me. I don't know why, when he comes home after being in prison and he's with Bobby Bird, and then within like a minute he's already up in the bedroom with the sister, and I'm just like, oh, come on James, what are you doing? They're in the fucking plane in Vietnam. Just insanity. Like there are things on this that are pure insanity. And there's also good stuff, like musical good stuff. They hop on the stage after Little Richard is out there doing a smoke break, a piss break, whatever's going on there. I don't know.
That's who that was. That was Little Richard.
Yeah.
Tutti Frutti. Yeah, that's Little Richard.
Yeah, I can't do that at all.
Woo-hoo! Yeah, he was getting it good.
Tutti Frutti. Yeah. Yeah, it was good stuff.
It was good. It was incredible.
It's good. It's I think a film that's maybe not as good as the sum of its parts, but
bingo.
Chadwick.
That's the best way to put it.
Chadwick is amazing. I mean, for me, maybe the most impressive performance from him because of just how different. I think that there's a through line that you can kind of see in most of the other characters that he plays and the movies that we're talking about particularly. This shares little to nothing in common with those. It's just completely out there and totally different, and he fucking nailed it. To use that lingo again, he fucking nailed it. So that's kind of how I feel about Get On Up.
I would 100% agree.
So that brings us to Marshall, which was released a few years later, October of 2017. Written by Michael Koskoff and Jacob Koskoff, directed by Reginald Hudlin, with Chadwick Boseman, Josh Gad, Kate Hudson, Dan Stevens, James Cromwell, and Sterling K. Brown. About the story of Thurgood Marshall, the crusading lawyer who would become the first African-American Supreme Court justice as he battles through one of his career-defining cases. So, this is a fun one for me, obviously, being in law school and whatnot. But I never actually saw this one. This is the first time I saw it. I wanted to see it when it came out and never quite made it happen, so I watched it for the first time. And it's good. It's not... I think I say it's better than Get On Up. It's not as good as 42.
Yeah,
but it's good.
Okay, good.
That's kind of how I feel about it.
I'm glad we're on the same page. I was interested to see where you landed with this one. I would 110% agree. I think that I don't know what it is about this movie. I think it's the way it's written. I think is probably the or the directional. Like you can. I don't know where my issue quite lies. I think you'd probably be better put at describing what I'm feeling, I think. So 42 very much felt like an organic movie, like it felt wholly realized. I think Marshall was that way. I don't think it was written in the same, or it wasn't directed in the same way. Some of the dialogue kind of felt like mechanical, I think, in some of the instances where I don't know, where like you have Marshall talking and then you have another character talking and everything. It just didn't seem to flow as well as some of the other movies. I think it's certainly edited better than Get On Up. The acting from Chadwick is strong. It's definitely not I wouldn't say it's not transformative like Get On Up.
No.
And I don't think that I think it probably falls on the director on this one. I would probably say. I will say that the person that I would say that I did not know a lot about Thurgood Marshall. I will 110% admit that. But what a guy. And it boils down to the same thing that the previous two films landed on. The adversities that man endured in order to become the man that goes down in history. It's nuts. Like it's remarkable. I will say that this has an incredible cast. This movie does. Kate Hudson. I haven't seen Kate Hudson in a movie in forever. I think what was that movie with Matthew McConaughey? I think it's How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days, I think.
Yeah, that was a few years ago.
Yeah, that was a few years ago. I think that's the last thing I know about Kate Hudson. She did an excellent job in this movie. I always enjoy seeing Josh Gad. I think he's awesome. It's one of my favorite. But This Is Us's Sterling K. Brown delivered an excellent performance. I thought his performance was absolutely outstanding. And in many ways, I think his performance was pretty stellar. Chadwick played a passionate lawyer in this movie. Obviously, he's Thurgood Marshall. He played a dominant role over his other characters. He dominated over everybody that he was exposed to, I think, out of necessity. And I think that's just the way that Thurgood Marshall probably was. But Sterling K. Brown's character really stood out to me the most in this movie, to be completely honest. I thought he nailed that role. I thought he did an excellent job. And that line that he delivered in the courtroom about where he was from and what it would mean to be with a white woman and why he lied on in testimony and everything else was super heartfelt and just heart-wrenching. But Chadwick Boseman delivered another excellent performance. And I thought he played a what's the best way to put it? Everybody looked towards Chadwick or Thurgood Marshall, and I think that's what he personified in this character. Josh Gad looked towards Chadwick Boseman for advice. He needed Chadwick Boseman to be confident in the courtroom. Sterling K. Brown looked to Chadwick for confidence in testifying. And he played the backbone of the entire defense in this movie. And I think that's what Chadwick was going for, was to be the headstrong and you can put your confidence in me and rest on me and we'll get through it. And I think that's what he was going for. If that makes any sense at all, I'm kind of just talking right now, but if that makes sense, he played the fucking beam. I'm trying to think of a word. What's that word when you're like everything can lean, like you're the steadfast, you're the fucking rock. You're the rock of everyone else. You know what I'm saying? Like you're the foundation. He's the foundation of everything.
Foundation. I think that's yeah.
And I think that he played that, even though he was a black man, and very much a white dominated world. It didn't matter. He knew what was right. He knew what was good, and he was the foundation of everything there. And that's a terrible way to kind of try to explain it. But I think that's what Chadwick was trying to personify. I think that the shortcomings come from the director in this movie.
Yeah, I'm trying to think about it, and as you've been talking, I've been trying to think about it. It is a little hard to pinpoint what it is about this film that prevents it from hitting the next level, because it seems like, again, all the pieces are kind of there. You have a very, very capable, very talented cast who all put in very good performances. You have, I think, a fairly interesting courtroom drama in terms of the mechanics of the case and the twists and turns and all that stuff. But something about it just doesn't quite hit, I think, the way that it wants to. And I don't know what it is. Like, it just...
Okay, well, we're in the same boat. Like, I mean,
it's all very good, and it's well made, and it's, like, well delivered.
You can see how I think it's the way the dialogue's delivered.
Maybe.
Like, it just doesn't... It's not even the way that... I mean, there's one spot in particular. I think it's when Chadwick meets Josh Gad in the fucking... I'm closing my eyes and I'm trying to remember for those that can't see me. I think it's when they meet he picks up his bags and it's all just kind of like matter of fact dialogue. It just kind of feels weird.
Okay.
You know does that make sense?
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm talking about?
Not specifically, but I get the vibe of it. I think that kind of aligns with my viewing of it.
He's like, oh, I pick up my bags, and he's like, okay, and it's just like,
yeah,
it seems kind of robotic, and I think that I don't know who that falls on. I don't know if that falls on the writer or if that falls on the director. There's certain performances in the movie that certainly elevate it, but like you say, it's hard to pinpoint why it doesn't. Like, it should be one of the best movies on this on in what we're watching, and I think it's better than Get On Up just on the principle of it's easier to follow. But
yes, it's linearly told, and I think it's still a compelling story, and so I think it's easier to kind of but it's kind of breezy. It's not as impactful as I think it could be in terms of, it's honestly it's very. I don't know if structurally similar, but I mean, I think story-wise, it is similar to 42 of here is a black man breaking barriers in a particular profession. And obviously 42 is baseball. Here, this is, the legal realm, basically. And, opportunities for black men were pretty limited in the 1940s, and Thurgood Marshall is someone who is kind of a force of nature in his own right, who basically is saying, fuck all that, and he's kind of almost this larger than life kind of person who is legitimately out there because he knows what he's fighting for is right, and he has the utmost confidence in it, and it shows. Like, he's not afraid to show that side of his personality, and I think that he's a dynamic, interesting kind of character to follow, and I think Chadwick nails it to again bring that through line here, and the story seems to set up for something like super interesting, but I don't know if that's what holds it back. I mean, the courtroom aspect of this, which is a substantial chunk of this, Thurgood Marshall's not allowed to speak in that. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like a lot of the courtroom drama has to live and die by Josh Gad's character and Dan Stevens' prosecutor character and the testimony of the witnesses and stuff like that. And I think that's all pretty good. Maybe it's a little unfair, but coming off the back of the trial of the Chicago 7, which is a better courtroom drama by far.
Yes,
you know what I mean?
Far.
Like, it's just sharper and wittier and more interesting and more compelling. And the judge here is a bit of a fuckhead. He's not as much of a fuckhead as the one was in the trial of Chicago 7, fortunately.
No.
Yeah, it's all kind of, I think it's all kind of just standard fare in terms of how it plays out. And I think it undermines the subject matter in some ways because it feels like it should be that sort of next level type, like, I don't know. I mean, like, again, I think on paper, the idea of having someone like Thurgood Marshall who, fights inequality and injustice and racism with his words is allowed, has to do it without his words. You take away the thing that he has in his arsenal, and like, that to me is an interesting concept, but it's not as interesting to watch. Like, it would obviously be more interesting to just watch Thurgood Marshall absolutely shred, Kate Hudson on cross-examination because she's fucking lying through her teeth. You know what I mean? Like, that's the sort of thing that could have been more interesting. And like, Josh Gad's good in this, and it's kind of I don't know. I guess I found his character to be kind of You know, like, am I supposed to feel bad for you kind of character? You know what I mean? Of just being like obviously
Josh Gad's character.
Yeah, like obviously, basically, Thurgood kind of aligning himself with them, and taking the pictures on the steps in front of the courtroom, and like all that sort of stuff is basically like, he's being, Josh Gad is getting alienated from his own world, and it's Thurgood very much making a point of like, welcome to my life. You know what I mean? Like, welcome to the ACP. Like that's kind of, it's kind of interesting. It's all interesting. It's just not. It doesn't ever hit those. Doesn't have the
high
behind
places
it for some reason. I really am struggling to identify why, but maybe it's the dialogue. Like you said, the dialogue. Maybe it's the way it's not the editing. I think the editing's fine. Although if I guess if I have a qualm on the editing, the flashbacks, and like the couple times where it's just like, it shows how like things are playing out per the testimony, which is obviously not necessarily reflective of how things actually played out, as we eventually learn. I kind of found those to be a little soap opera-ish, I think, in terms of their staging and filmmaking.
It's because it's standard. It feels standard fare. It feels cookie cutter, kind of.
I think, a lot of it, that particularly, though, stood out to me as just being like, this feels a little more amateurish in terms of its literal filmmaking there. So, yeah. But I don't know. I mean, I guess if nothing else, if I can't identify what didn't totally work about this, I can always go back to the performances, and I will co-sign Sterling K. Brown being fantastic, and of course I will co-sign Chadwick Boseman being fantastic. I think he really just something about the way he embodied Thurgood, had this confidence to him, which is almost like sort of the confidence we saw from Jackie Robinson in 42, but it's like more on display here and more outwardly shown and stuff like that. It's good. I think it's good. So, it's a good movie. I think maybe we're being overly critical or maybe overly harsh. It seemed like it had the potential to be in that 42 realm, and it kind of wasn't. It's just good. It's just a good movie, is what I would say. So, I think that's more or less what I have on that. What I will say, I guess, I think we talked about it for 42. Get On Up is streaming on HBO Max. If you have that, Marshall is not streaming as far as I'm aware again, but is one I bought for I think like $5 digitally, so it's fairly easy to get a hold of it. So yeah, I mean that's pretty much all I got. You have anything on your end for Marshall that we haven't already hit on? You think?
Other than the fact of because of Chadwick's involvement in the movie, Jesus Christ, because of Chadwick's involvement in the movie. And because who he chose to characterize in his career, I'm now exposed to the career of Thurgood Marshall.
Yeah, and that's good.
Otherwise I probably would never have. I wouldn't have known about. I'm sure I learned about him in school, and I just didn't. Know about it.
Honestly, maybe.
But, I mean, it's Florida education. I don't know if I would have. And his career and what he stood for and what he accomplished is simply incredible. I mean, it's
Thurgood Marshall is one of the greatest legal minds of all time. I don't think there's ever been an opinion by Thurgood Marshall that I've read and really disagreed with. Like maybe the fine points I've just kind of like, okay, fine. But unfortunately, a lot of his opinions were dissenting because he was one of the most liberal justices on, several courts that were, let's just say, not as liberal as he was. But his contributions to the legal world are really, really impressive. I mean,
they're
Brown
profound.
v. Board of Education alone is a seminal legal case ending for basically starting the end of racial segregation as a constitutional violation.
Huge.
I mean that's a literal kind of barrier being broken in a huge way. And
modern America owes itself to Thurgood Marshall.
Yeah,
and it's like, I mean, it's just and for that to be kind of glazed over, for me not to know that, I feel like I was kind of duped I don't know. I'm sure. Like I said, I don't want to say I was duped because maybe I wasn't. I just don't remember being taught it. But I mean, it's a profound thing to do. And you can see you understand the passion, and that's one thing Chadwick Boseman continued to personify was the passion of these actual historical figures. And yeah, thank you for that, sir. I really appreciate it because, like I said, otherwise I probably would not have known it.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, obviously it's kind of worked out for the purposes of how we structure this episode and the things that we kind of curated to talk about. You know, these first three movies we've talked about are hugely impactful Black, historical figures. I mean, for
Black American people that persevered through all sorts of shit.
Yeah.
In order to change the world. I mean, they changed the fucking world.
They did.
It extends beyond America, I'm sure. I mean, but it certainly applies to America.
Yeah.
I mean, they changed America, and as we know it, they changed the course of history for America.
Yeah. And you have one actor that, was able to embody those roles so well and bring awareness, like that's the thing, and not everyone knows the full story of Jackie Robinson. Not everyone knows the full story of James Brown. Granted, maybe we still don't know it after Get On Up. Not everyone knows the full story of Thurgood Marshall. And obviously each of these movies are scratching the surface of kind of what their kind of careers ultimately amounted to in some ways. But they are kind of a big flag post to say, like, this movie exists because this person was really fucking important and really, a big deal. Let's to put it that way. And I just think it's really awesome that Chadwick put so much of himself into all these roles. And Marshall is one that he did it after he was diagnosed with cancer. So just just insane. So yeah, that's I think that's Marshall. That brings us to Black Panther. Released February of 2018, written by Ryan Coogler, Joe Robert Cole, directed by Ryan Coogler, starring a long list of very talented folks: Chadwick Boseman, Michael B. Jordan, Lupita Nyong'o, Denai Guerrera, Martin Freeman, Daniel Kaluuya, Letitia Wright, Winston Duke, Angela Bassett, Forrest Whitaker, Andy Serkis, and Sterling K. Brown. In this one as well. Bit role, but he's here. So in the Black Panther, T'Challa, heir to the hidden but advanced kingdom of Wakanda, must step forward to lead his people into a new future and confront a challenger from his country's past.
Are we talking about this fucking movie again? This fucking Black Panther. Oh my god, I didn't even see it.
3 times on Black Panther. This is literally the third time we're covering it. No shit. We covered it regular episode, Marvel Cinematic Universe Phase 3, and we're here again. Suffice it to say, Black Panther is an excellent film. We really probably don't need to deconstruct this film in any sort of depth, other than to say it's a phenomenal film with a great cast, great performances, good set pieces, and an interesting story. Like it's all there. It's one of the MCU's finest, I think, probably in your opinion.
Oh, yes.
MCU's finest, but,
Easily one of my favorite MCU movies. I think the coolest thing at least for this episode, is to gain the perspective of, I mean, it's like he took the previous 3 roles that we talked about and culminated them into this role. Like, it's easy to see why Kevin Feige or Ryan Coogler or whoever the casting person was for this movie picked Chadwick Boseman to play T'Challa. Like it's literally the perfect role for him. And you take the fictional experience and for the movie to begin and end in the way it did, is so incredibly powerful. And it just takes the through line of Chadwick's career and just kind of puts an exclamation point on it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I don't have a whole lot more to say than I've already said. I wish I had seen it again. I will see it again. It'd be a really good movie to watch after I change my get a couple of subwoofers in the living room. I would really like to see it then. But I absolutely adore this movie. I adore what it stands for, and for Chadwick to star in it, and for it to stand what it stands for, and have Chadwick in it it's conceptually, I'll say conceptually because I haven't seen it, but I have seen it, but I haven't seen it again after I've watched these other movies. It would make the performance all that more powerful. And I wish I watched it again.
Well, there's always time you can watch it post-recording. There's no issues with that, of course. Yeah, I did watch it since I knew I wanted to talk about it a little bit. And I think that I went into it was obviously just kind of looking more specifically at his performance and kind of how he is T'Challa, and this is interesting because it's the first movie that is a fictional character. He is taking a character from the page, to the screen, and obviously Marvel I think has. In translating a lot of these characters, like, they kind of synthesize elements from different comic book runs and kind of, turn it into their own kind of spin on these things. And I think that's true here. And obviously you have Ryan Coogler at the helm, who's an amazing writer and director who clearly cares about this character and recognized the character's importance and what the character could be for audiences. And obviously, the reception of this movie is a testament to that. Something I talked about earlier is just that the pure numbers, the box office gross, the reception that this thing had critically too. Like people ate this shit up, obviously, because it was a really, really great film. But they ate it up because it was a black character as the lead with a 99, maybe 95% black supporting cast in it. Martin Freeman's your token white guy in this movie is basically what it amounts to.
Yeah.
And he's good, you know what I mean? But he's kind of the butt of a few jokes, and it's like this is a movie really principally made by black people for black people and in a way, but not to the exclusion of other people. It's just kind of just been like, this is our time in the spotlight. It's like, without to tie it all together, maybe without the Jackie Robinsons, without the James Browns, without the Thurgood Marshalls, you don't get to a point where Black Panther as a comic book character gains enough importance that Marvel Studios says, let me go to Ryan Coogler, to Joe Robert Cole, to this cast and hires them and says, let's do this thing, let's make this movie and see what happens. And it turns out to be the maybe the biggest smash success that Marvel has. Obviously Endgame is a huge thing in and of itself as kind of this culmination of a 20+ movie saga, but Black Panther's a standalone movie. And obviously Black Panther was introduced in Civil War, he appears in Infinity War and Endgame subsequently, but Black Panther stands on its own merits. It will always stand on its own merits. And in a haunting way, I think now it kind of has to. Because unfortunately, this is the last lead performance that we get of Chadwick as T'Challa. He's good in Infinity War and he's good in Endgame, but he's not the main character. He's not the focal point. Maybe no one is really, but here he is, and you get. Yes, I think I agree with you. It is kind of the culmination of a lot of the elements that we've seen in some of his previous performances that we've talked about today. And they all get infused into him making this character his own. And I think that's what's interesting is
who is a fucking king.
It's the regality of his performance that stands out in this movie. Is T'Challa is a king, and someone who was born to be king, and when the time comes,
who had to fight to be king.
When the time comes to be king, he's not quite ready. He still has to find his footing. It's him learning to become king, and to really accept what that means, and to take his nation into bold new directions. Mostly as a result of one big asshole in the form of Killmonger coming to town and really kind of mucking things up for a bit, throwing him down a waterfall. Sucked for a bit there, but you kind of figured it out. Yeah, just something about the way that Chadwick Boseman inhabited the role of T'Challa. It's, I mean, the MCU has always had stellar casting. I mean, they really knocked it out of the park, I think, movie after movie. But Chadwick is one of their finest castings, I think, of all time. I mean, there's subtlety to his performance. There's just such a presence to everything that he does in this movie. The way he moves as Black Panther, I mean, some of it's maybe CGI, but, you know, I think that there's something about the way he moves, the way he kind of delivers things, and even the kind of the little humor that's laced into this movie of, you know, I never freeze, you know, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like, it all kind of works.
The accent
work
mean,
is...
even down to the...
Yeah, it's funny you bring that up. I've watched Black Panther so many times that when I see Chadwick Boseman, I just assume he has that accent. So when 21 Bridges was actually the first movie I watched of these 6, like within the past few weeks. And when he starts talking with American accent, I'm like, that's a pretty good American accent. Yeah, he's pretty good at this. And then I'm like, wait, hold on a second. He is.
That's the way he really talks.
Yeah. Which is to say, I mean, you know, the accent work is really good here.
It's the work. It's the fucking work he puts in.
It's more impressive, I think, because he has to put his stamp on it, right? You know, it's not... I mean, I don't know.
And he fought for that. I think he fought for that, right? Like, he fought for the... I think I read or heard somebody talk about it. He made a point for this character to talk this way. I think it was probably in the, what was it, Civil War? Civil War, I think, is when he established that.
That sounds right. I think we either talked about it or I read something about it. But yeah, I think that was kind of his contribution of saying, like, this is an African character, you know, and granted it's from an isolated African nation who hasn't come into contact with others, but, like, you know, it makes sense as kind of a representation for the people from this country to talk
a certain
African,
way, right.
You know, in terms of kind of the accent that they speak English in and such. So, yeah, I think it's the little details again with this performance, particularly with T'Challa, that it's just really good. And I mean, like I said, I don't really need to dwell on the fact that this is an excellent movie. If you really want our fuller thoughts, either listen to our episode that we did kind of around the time this movie came out, or listen to our later thoughts that we had with Henrique when we did our MCU Phase 3 mega episode in the lead up to Infinity War. You know,
our mega episode.
It was long. It was long. Let's put it that way. The thing that hit me about this is, you know, we learned recently from the Disney Investor Day, Kevin Feige said that the Black Panther sequel is moving forward. They're going to be making a sequel, and they will not be recasting the role of T'Challa. And I think up until that point, I was kind of hemming and hawing myself of like, shit, what do you do with a Black Panther sequel? Like, obviously, that's not the most important thing. You know, and so I hope that in talking about Chadwick's performance, it's not to... It's about kind of the thing that he did and the legacy he leaves behind. But that legacy is so great that it creates that conversation of, well, what next?
You have to have the conversation.
The Black Panther character is too important to just say, we got to hang up the suit. You know what I mean? Like, we can't do anything with this character. We're done with it. Like, that's not the answer. And clearly the answer is make more Black Panther and figure out a way to do it. Obviously, at this point, without him, out of necessity. And so I was hemming and hawing of just being like, could you recast T'Challa? Could you multiverse shenanigans? And T'Challa looks a little different right now, but it's still T'Challa for all intents and purposes. Or like, how do you structure this movie? How do you approach a sequel? How do you make a sequel to one of the best movies that the MCU has offered, who is anchored by one of the best performers in the MCU in one of the most interesting dynamic roles that the MCU has to offer? And I hemmed and hawed, and obviously they made the announcement, and it was like, I respect that decision. There's no easy way to go about this. I rewatched Black Panther, and my initial thought was, yeah, you can't recast this role. He's too important. He's too important to T'Challa. You can keep these characters going. You can. I mean, how the hell you write off T'Challa? That's someone else's problem, right? Yes,
but you don't have another T'Challa,
I think that has to be the answer, right? You know, like I said, the mechanics of how you get that in place that's another person's problem. I trust Kevin Feige and Ryan Coogler and company to figure something out that hopefully makes sense and, you know, still sets the stage for a good Black Panther sequel. But the Black Panther sequel is going to look remarkably different than the first one. You know, this first movie kind of has an almost elevated importance now and an elevated kind of stature as a result of Chadwick unfortunately dying, in the sense that, like, you won't see it again. You won't be able to see it again, and so it just makes it this one thing. You know, it's a Joker, Heath Ledger-esque type thing in The Dark Knight.
That's
you
right.
know, just a monumental thing, and you know, we had the fortune to see Chadwick reprise the role of Black Panther in multiple films after this, but just not in this sort of nature, not this sort of degree. I don't know. Just, watching this movie again, it's good for all of the reasons that we talked about on those other episodes, but it just takes this elevated kind of role because this represents kind of the end of an era in a sort of way. And look, we got 2 more movies that we're going to talk about for Chadwick in terms of, you know, his performances and those kind of films. But for me, Black Panther is the pinnacle of Chadwick Boseman's career. I think it is, and I think it will be for many people, kind of due to the, you know, the nature of what it is. You know, it's absolutely the biggest of any of these movies in terms of financial success and in terms of reach and such. And, you know, I think that's okay. You know, I like that he was able to leverage, if you want to put it that way, you know, taking these kind of historical figures and land kind of the role of a lifetime, you know, and T'Challa and becoming the Black Panther. You know, for I think everyone, you know, Chadwick Boseman will forever always be the Black Panther, and I think there's just something really, really touching and kind of cool about that. You know,
Absolutely.
I would absolutely trade Chadwick Boseman. You know, I'm not saying I want it to be this way. You know, you know, we kind of have to look at it this way out of necessity. I want Black Panther 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, all with Chadwick Boseman in that lead role. But I know we can't get that anymore. You know what I mean? So this is kind of how the way things have to be, and so it really sucks. But it does. I don't know.
But he set the world on fire. His last, his last, I guess, but his career led him to a point where he could make such a significant. I mean, it made a significant impact on. Like, he went from personifying people that made impacts, you know what I mean, to
being that person,
to being that person that made an impact.
That's fucking cool. It's awesome.
It is totally awesome, and it. I said it at the beginning of the episode. It overwhelms me with joy to know that his career path led him to the point where he could be the one making the impact.
Yeah,
and he did.
Yeah, he did in a huge way for us, obviously, but for people, for Black people in this country, throughout the world. I mean, everywhere.
For a young Black child to watch the representation on the screen, it's very much like the young Black child in 42 that watches Jackie Robinson go and play baseball.
And then he grows up and plays baseball himself.
That's it.
Yeah,
he's that person now.
Yeah, yeah. Exactly.
You know what I mean? It's touching. Like, I get a little emotional talking about it. Like, it's fucking cool. It's really cool, and I'm glad that Chadwick had that experience. Solely on the based on what he chose to represent in his movies. Every time they checked the board and hit, you know what I mean, and rolled the camera. You know what I mean? It's such a big deal.
Yeah.
It's a really big deal. I read somewhere, I don't know where I read it, but they wanted to replace one of the Confederate monuments with Chadwick Boseman as the Black Panther, which is...
Fucking do it. Yeah.
Yeah, right? Like, it's...
Is this a question?
Yeah, I mean, it's... That's the kind of impact that he had with this movie. It's widespread, it's powerful, and it was financially successful for everyone involved. I mean, it's a world-renowned impact that he had with this role. And it's absolutely incredible. Like I said, I don't know how to put it into words other than the way I've said it, but yeah, fucking Chadwick Boseman as Black Panther is remarkable. Yeah, I don't know any more superlatives to say. I don't know any more adjectives other to say that it's one of the it's a career defining moment, and it couldn't be more well placed as your, like, if you're gonna choose, if you could choose for your light to shine brightest, this would be it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And obviously it shows. I mean, the world responded in an incredible way about this movie. And good for him. You know what I mean? Yeah. Good for him. That's the best way. I mean, if you had any way to go out, that's the way to do it. You made a difference. You made an incredibly huge difference. On everybody, not just the little black kid watching the movie, you know, that sees representation, on absolutely everybody, on a couple of 30-year-old white guys. I mean, it's awesome. So thank you for participating in the Black Panther, Chadwick Boseman.
Yes, indeed. Thank you. I was going to say, oh yes, Black Panther's on Disney Plus for anyone that.
If you were,
I feel like most people
under a rock and you haven't seen it,
I think most people have seen it at this point. Obviously, do yourself a favor and watch it if you haven't already. But it's a good time for a rewatch, if nothing else. You know, Andrew will soon discover that for himself, and I discovered it for myself quite recently. So yeah. One other sort of fun fact, which is just tying some of these projects together. Marshall was directed by Reginald Hudlin, who actually wrote Black Panther. He wrote the Black Panther comics from 2005 to 2008, did a pretty well-regarded run. So, I don't know, just kind of a fun kind of synergy there.
So the guy that directed Marshall wrote some Black Panther runs?
That's correct. Yeah, he wrote Black Panther for a few years there. So, yeah, I don't know, it's just cool. I don't know, I just kind of like that. I think it's neat. But anyway, that is Black Panther, which brings us to 21 Bridges, released in November of 2019, written by Adam Mervis and Matthew Michael Carnahan, directed by Brian Kirk, starring Chadwick Boseman, Sienna Miller, J.K. Simmons, Stephen James, and Taylor Kitsch. It's an embattled NYPD detective who's thrust into a citywide manhunt for a pair of cop killers after uncovering a massive and unexpected conspiracy.
So this movie kind of sucks. I didn't really like this movie.
No? Okay. All right.
Chadwick was good in it, but I think he was limited on what he was dealt for, you know, I don't know. Like, this is one of those, I think this came out when there was a lot of cop issues. I mean, there's still a lot of cop issues.
It's still around, yeah.
About it. But this came out, like, in the middle of it. And I don't know. I don't think it was one of those. I don't think it was I don't want to say it was a political movie because it wasn't, but it could have been, I guess, because it came out like around the same time. But the movie itself, like as a whole, like isolated from the world in which it was released into, it was a pretty. It was just kind of a lame movie. I don't know. I didn't really get anything from this one. I don't know.
Out of words.
Out of words.
I think I like this movie more than I expected to.
Well, good for you, dude. I'm glad.
Which is to say, this movie, I saw the trailer for it probably 300 fucking times. You know, when we were allowed in theaters and such. And I just remember it looking like the most generic fucking cop movie of all time. And it's just like...
That's what I got from it. I got the most generic movie of all time from it. That's what I got from it.
I think I actually thought it ended up being a cut above generic cop movie. It felt like it had a little bit more commentary to it than I expected. I thought it was going to be pretty boilerplate in terms of cop's good, bad guy's bad, let's catch him, let's move on. And I think there was more subtlety to the plot in the sense that,
cops were bad.
The conspiracy was that, the cops were pretty corrupt, whereas, Chadwick was, a badass detective who's a straight line detective. He follows the law. And I kind of appreciated that, like, he was just a kind of a likable protagonist who was trying to do the right thing. Like, maybe one of the few people in this profession, at least as per this movie, not to politicize, I guess, everything else, who's trying to do the right thing. And I enjoyed that aspect to him, and he's just surrounded by fucking corruption everywhere, and and kind of trying to get to the bottom of that.
Everybody considers him, hey, listen, we're just going to put you on this because you kill people.
Yeah.
You kill everybody. Yeah. So we're just going to put you on this shit. No, I don't fucking kill everybody. I kill people who fucking pull guns on me.
Yeah.
I pull yeah. So they tried to make his character nuanced, but it just...
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's any... Well, I mean, it starts with like when he's a kid, and like his dad's a cop who I think dies on, gets killed on duty. And so like they kind of start, and then he's like with his mom who's I think sick, and like... So like the first 20 minutes are like trying to set the stage of like making this kind of sympathetic protagonist, and then it just kind of turns into the generic movie. I think the beat to beat the movie is fairly generic in terms of what it is. I think it's just, for me, I was surprised by the plot not being. I think the plot being a little bit more in touch with kind of the realities of today. I found a little bit surprising. I thought it was, like I said, going to be a very. A very kind of just, I don't know the best way to put it is, but I really thought it was going to be exactly what I expected it to be, of just being like, I'm going to groan at every scene in this. And I thought it was fine. It wasn't amazing. Certainly, probably the worst of the six that we watched. Definitely the worst of the six that we watched. But it was fine. I did enjoy that it was partially shot in Philadelphia, although it did not take place in Philadelphia. The whole subway sequence at the end was definitely on a Philadelphia subway.
On the tube?
On the tube. It was on the tube in Philadelphia, which I thought was kind of fun to watch. The fact that they were trying to pass it off as New York was actually kind of laughable. It's one of the few instances where I was kind of taken out of the movie. I'm just like, that's not fucking New York. That's Philadelphia. No question. It was unmistakable, but... yeah, it's fine. I think Chadwick's good. I think like Sienna Miller's bad in this. She's got a wonk ass accent that she's going for, which is real bad. J.K. Simmons is great. I think J.K. Simmons is always great. And he was really fucking good here. Stephen James was good, and I think Taylor Kitsch was good for kind of the characters that they were kind of asked to play. But Chadwick was good. I think kind of a straight-laced kind of performance of just, but like I still feel like, I don't know. Like I bought into him. Like even though this is probably like the least interesting character that he's played of the five that we've talked about so far, even when he's in kind of a generic, maybe less than amazing movie, like he's still good in it. And
you definitely don't throw blame at him.
Yeah,
he's totally fine.
And I will say, I think this is probably the first movie where I think that we have the benefit of hindsight and kind of knowing things. You can kind of see he looks more, skinnier in this one, and at times it kind of seems like just the weight loss was a lot more dramatic here compared to seeing him in Black Panther and all those other movies where.
That's right.
And so it's kind of. It's pretty sad from that standpoint of just kind of knowing like what he's going through while he's making something like this, but for him to kind of still go through the efforts of making even something like this, which is not a groundbreaking film in any way whatsoever, was still kind of, I don't know. I mean, it was still a really impressive effort, I think, on his behalf. So, it was fine. I enjoyed it. I mean, it was the first one I watched, and I'm kind of glad it was, because I think pretty much everything that came after it in terms of what I watched, and obviously what we've now talked about for the most part, is all better. It's all even Get On Up. It's messy, but it's still better, and I think a more enjoyable, snappy watch overall. But this could have been worse, is what I would say about it, and I'm glad that it was as okay as it was, and that's kind of how I felt about it. I guess you kind of you weren't digging it too much, which I think is understandable, but yeah.
It's totally okay.
It's totally okay. One thing I will say about it, and maybe perhaps my final thought, since it doesn't sound like there's a whole lot we need to dive into here. I kind of thought, why is this movie called 21 Bridges? Because there's like very little parts of this plot that actually interestingly tie into that. Like they shut down,
21 bridges.
They shut down all the bridges and, and stuff like that. But the cop killers never actually try to get to those bridges. They just like find out like, oh shit, it's shut down. We're stuck here. I guess we got to hang out and kind of do our thing for a while. And I just kind of felt like there should have been some interesting plot angle to them actually trying to escape. They were trying to escape, obviously, but it wasn't. I don't know. To me, it was just like, what, this movie could have been called anything else, and I think it, like, you know what I mean, like Chadwick Boseman detective movies. It would have been fine as a title. Would have been a little bit more accurate to kind of the final product, but it's
whatever.
It's a movie. This is the one of the 6 that is the most definitively a movie, I would say.
So let's get into this last one.
All right, the final film performance of Chadwick Boseman comes in Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, which was released in theaters November of 2020, is on Netflix as of December 2020. So this is a very recent release. It's just been on Netflix, I think, for over a month now, maybe a month and a half, roughly at this point. 21 Bridges is on Showtime, if anyone has Showtime, for the record. Ma Rainey's Black Bottom was written by Ruben Santiago Hudson, directed by George C. Wolfe, starring Chadwick Boseman and Viola Davis. I think is really its 2 leads, alongside Coleman Domingo, Glenn Turman, and Michael Potts. During a recording session, tensions rise between Ma Rainey, her ambitious horn player, and the white management determined to control the uncontrollable mother of the blues. So yeah, this is pretty recent. I think we'll still approach it kind of in spoilery territory. As a preliminary thing, it's very short. It's about an hour and a half. So, if you don't want to hear anything about it, pause, watch it, come back. You know what I mean? But yeah, and that's not the most plot heavy movie either. It's not designed to be that sort of movie in any sort of way, I don't think. Although its last third kind of gets a little heavier on the plot.
Yeah, for sure.
It's based on a play. That probably won't surprise you to find out, based on kind of how this movie is.
Oh, I didn't know that.
It's based on a play of the same name by August Wilson, who did Fences, which had a film adaptation a few years back with Denzel Washington in it. And it's a very play-like film, I think. Dialogue-driven film, singular setting, basically. Performance-driven film. It's the performers in it driving the momentum of the film, I think, overall.
You can see it. Now that you say that. I can see it from the set pieces and everything else, that it would be a play-like movie.
For my money, I think this is a film that probably works better as a play. I think in terms of just it's not an overly interesting film, I guess, in the sense of kind of what it is. Like it in terms of the filmmaking medium, it doesn't exactly use it to its full potential, I don't think. There's a way to take a play and kind of expand on it to really kind of do something, with the advantages that filmmaking can have in terms of different settings and stuff like that. This one is content to kind of just be limited and really still feel dialogue driven as a play would. And it's not I don't say that to the detriment of the film. I just think it's not an interestingly shot or crafted or edited film. It's a play, it's kind of a filmed play, more or less, with a little bit of extra flourishes. And that leaves room for, I think, its performances to dominate, which is fine, because I think you have Chadwick Boseman and you have Viola Davis, who are both in Get On Up, to be fair, as mother and son in that one, in a sort of way. Chadwick was an older James Brown. But they do share a scene and Get On Up together, I guess, to be fair, and backstage, I think, after a performance. But those two here are this movie, I think, in a way.
That is the same actress, isn't it?
Yep.
Didn't know that.
So yeah, what's your take on Ma Rainey's Black Bottom?
So it's interesting that you say that it's a play, because that makes complete sense. I think I told you before we recorded, I thought that this was like it felt like a Quentin Tarantino kind of experience as far as like dialogue exchange and like the length of exchange, I should say, with like dialogue and characters and stuff in one sequence.
4 people sitting in a room having a conversation for 5 to 10 minutes for good chunks of this film, like different conversations interrupted by maybe a recording session or some other go get me a Coke or something like that happening.
Exactly. So it makes complete sense as to why it would feel that way if it's based on a play and they don't kind of deviate from that kind of structure. I thought it was a really good movie. Admittedly, I had to watch it in 2 sequences or 2 sessions because I turned it off at probably like midnight at one night, and it's like I can't process it. And I was content to record on what I watched. And you said otherwise. You said I needed to watch there's a couple sequences there at the end that I needed to watch, so I watched them. And I was gonna watch. Admittedly, I was gonna watch just a little sequence, like 3 minutes here, and I ended up getting sucked into it. And I just ended up watching the last third of the movie before recording. It is a It's one of those Chadwick performances that are profound and passionate and based on Black American experiences in early in I don't want to say early America, but 20th century America. And it's really fucking good. It's profound. It's really good. And I'm glad that I chose to, not rewatch it, but watch the last third of the movie, because I was just going to, write it off as far as what I've seen, and it changed. The movie took a different turn by the time it hit the last third of the movie. And I think by this performance, you want to talk about hindsight and being able to see the differences in the body of Chadwick as he chooses to personify characters and stuff. You can see that he is certainly a skinnier person in this movie. It's sad in that respect, like you said earlier. But his energy does not change.
Yeah, that's impressive, right? I mean...
Yeah, his ability to deliver this performance, which is arguably one of his most passionate performances, I think, and one of his most energetic performances, is incredible. Like, I can't believe that he filmed this movie, a year or whatever it was before he ended up passing away. Like, it's remarkable. Because the performance in this movie, especially the last third of this movie, was profound. Like, it was ridiculous. It was very good. Other than that, like you say, it's only an hour and a half, so I don't want to say it's a hard watch, but it's a different kind of watch. It's not like your typical movie. So it's certainly not for everybody, I don't think. It's definitely a more art housey, I guess. It's not even art housey, but it's a different kind of movie.
It's honestly, it's
a play.
It's a play. You're watching a filmed play. I mean, you have to kind of know. I think walk in expecting that. I think to kind of know what you're going to get. I think if you're expecting a dynamic thing where it's moving from scene to scene to scene, as most movies do, you might be disappointed, because it's really not about that. It's really just about kind of a day in the life of some, as it turns out, a pretty bad day for some folks. But you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
it's really kind of a cross section, more than it is a full, laid out story of day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, or, character arc going from A to B to C to D. Like, it has a kind of accelerated version of that, but, it's just kind of I don't know, plays versus film. I mean, it's just a fundamentally different experience any way you kind of spin it. And this doesn't really try to transform the original written play into anything beyond just kind of what it already was. And clearly, I mean, I think it's a good thing. I mean,
it's cool.
I think having not seen the play, I think I would enjoy the play a lot. I think it's something that would be very good to watch live, assuming that was a thing that was allowed or whatever. And this is a good movie to watch. It's a good movie. It's just, it is what it is, I guess, is kind of how I feel about it. I've just been like, you have to accept it at face value of kind of what it's going for, and what it's going for is really just trying not to expand the bounds of the play. So, yeah, I don't know. Maybe that's being a bit circular about it, but I did enjoy it.
No, it's not. It totally makes sense. Like, I mean, it's not. It doesn't feel like it's not a typical movie, and it doesn't feel like a typical movie. And like I said, I'm blown away that you say it was a play, because it 100% is a play. I can't think of a better way to put it than it's a play that they recorded. I think it's interesting, like the characters' interactions and stuff. Like it's real sharp, and it feels like a fucking play. I don't know how else to word it. So
there's just something. There's just something fundamentally different in terms of dialogue, delivery. I think even delivery. I think all these characters have almost a stage-like performance to them, which isn't bad,
right?
In and of itself. It's just that usually there's a little more subtlety, I think, typically in film performances, and there's a little bit more expressiveness and dominance and in the way that people will play a character on stage when they're catering to people that are sitting 20 rows back versus people that are watching it on a big screen. You know what I mean? Like, the subtlety kind of gets lost unless you can kind of see it up close, which most people can't when you're watching a play. When you're watching a film, like, you can do a close take on someone's face and you're getting every little thing that's going to come through in that performance. So I think it kind of takes on that over the topness a little bit to some extent. I think some are a little bit more play.
The makeup for Ma Rainey, I think, is certainly
pretty extravagant.
Yeah, exactly, bold. I would say
bold. It's a bold look, certainly. But I think what plays are. Is that I think they're driven by the people that play those roles that are kind of within it, and this is exactly the same. This isn't going to win any points for cinematography. It's not going to win any points in my eyes for directing. It's not going to win any points for really anything technical. You know what I mean? Except to say that the people in this movie were incredible. And I think I'll start with Viola Davis, because I think that she was really, really great as Ma Rainey. I mean, I think she put on weight for this role, and she kind of this was almost a transformative way. Like, it really didn't look like Viola Davis, to be honest, for most of it. But she just had a way about her as Ma Rainey that was a dominant personality, larger than life personality, who was very interesting to follow and to see the kind of the control that she exercised amidst the 1920s, where this film makes no secret of racial relations in Chicago particularly, but also just to say like she's hugely popular, her records sell well for a black audience, and she has like a white manager, and she's at like a recording studio owned by a white man. It's like they don't really give a shit about her. They just want her music because they're going to make money off it. Like, that's absolutely true. It was like the thing that it drove Chadwick Boseman's character over the edge. Yeah, I mean, and that's kind of almost the final note in the film too. Is just a little extra fuck you, to black people at the hand of white people. Is kind of how I took the last.
You're
gonna
sequence. Dance however we want you to dance, and then if you don't want to dance, whatever, we'll take whatever you wrote and we'll just have a white person play it.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, basically. So. Which is just really shitty. Infuriating, yes, of course, frustrating. But yeah, I think Viola Davis is really, really good here. I think she's great. Just a really commanding kind of role, and a role that needs that sort of kind of performance. And then you have Chadwick. You have Chadwick Boseman here playing the trumpeter and Ma Rainey's band, who, is kind of a larger than life person, I guess, in his own sort of way. Not in the way that Ma Rainey is, but in terms of the aspirations of what's to come in his future, and kind of the way he kind of conducts himself and composes himself. Like he knows, like, like, I've got a future ahead of me. And then it all kind of comes tumbling down a little bit in some ways, but there's, I think, maybe 3 sequences in this film where Chadwick just owns it. It's one of those things where there'd be like a monologue or a soliloquy or something like that on stage, but the kind of moments where, like, you kind of forget you're watching a film and you just kind of get transfixed by, like, what's happening. And I think those 3 moments, the first time is when he talks about what happened to his parents. He's kind of explaining it to the rest of the bandmates. Just heartbreaking, and you could feel that. And, he it's another thing. Chadwick just became this guy, you know what I mean? And, it's a lot of hard-hitting and fast-moving dialogue that kind of happens through this, but, like, he is, even if it does still feel to me kind of like a performance on a stage performance in a sort of way, like, you still feel the emotion, like the raw emotion and just the power behind everything that he kind of says. And that kind of feeds into his blasphemous rant, if you will, of rebuking God and, saying God doesn't care about black people, and not exactly in those terms, he might say, but you know what I mean? That sort of thing. And then finally, when his shoes get stepped on, just those 3 moments are just, I don't know. You probably can. I kind of saw it, I guess, by virtue of watching you watch a 5-minute sequence and then just continuing on for the rest of the 15 minutes you had to, left at that point. Like, those are the kind of scenes, those are the kind of sequences where that type of performance just hooks you in, and, like, you're sucked in, and you're just, like, watching it. Like, I enjoyed, like, the dialogue and, like, the conversations, and, like, it was fun as, like, kind of like a play-like experience. But those sequences those were where I felt the emotion. Those were where I felt the power behind Chadwick's performance. And obviously it has that additional emotional resonance that attaches by virtue of the fact that, shit, this is the last thing he made, before he died, in terms of film roles. Like, this is the last time we'll see him do new stuff. You know what I mean? So I don't know. There's a lot of facets that kind of make sequences in this movie just really stand out. From an emotional point of view. I felt those. Like, this movie wasn't, like, amazing. Like, I think it's really good, and it's good. I think it's clearly a good play that was made into a good movie. It's unique. It's not the most exciting movie again, and I don't say that to demean the movie again, but this is a movie that you watch the movie to enjoy its performances. And it's almost a showcase for Chadwick Boseman and Viola Davis, and it's kind of fun for him to have his last performance be the showy kind of performance where he's allowed to just fucking go for it, and when he goes for it, he just nails it. Of course he does. He's shown it time and time again. He's now 6 for 6 in terms of performances of the things that we're talking about, and this to me is obviously a much more impactful film, a much more impactful performance than a 21 Bridges was, or anything like that, but.
Sure.
I don't know. Something about this just kind of being his final performance. Just, I don't know. Something of it. It feels right, in a sort of way that, like, he was given an opportunity to just own, the camera in a sort of way. And I guess I kind of appreciated that.
And I really enjoyed what's this guy's name? Let me see. Glenn Turman. Glenn Turman was awesome in this movie too.
Mm-hmm. He was Toledo, the pianist.
Yeah, he was really good.
Yeah,
but other than that, I think that's it. That's all I got to say about that.
Okay. Well, then what I will ask you is, do you have any final thoughts? We've talked about 6 movies. We talked about 42. Talked about Get On Up, Marshall, Black Panther, 21 Bridges, Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. We covered roughly, 7 years of Chadwick's filmography. I think kind of the bulk of his lead performances, I think, throughout his short his unfortunately short career, but a lot of impact, I think, overall. But what do you think? I mean, when you think about Chadwick Boseman, you think about what we talked about.
When you say Chadwick Boseman now, I think that you can easily say that he had a clear career path, and I feel like he had a clear indication of the people that he wanted to personify in film. And I think that you can say that he made a significant impact on cultural and he made a cultural impact in America based on his roles that he played. He made a significant impact, and I think he's a very important person, not only for cinematic history, but history in and of itself. Like, I think he played a significant role in representation and personifying the struggle of Black people in America, and I think that I think he did an excellent service. I think he did a real significant service for fucking America, man. I think he's fucking important. He's an important dude.
Yeah.
Yeah. I struggle to find the words. I think I'm almost a bottle of wine in. So, like I said, I don't want to mess it up, but, you watch especially when you watch his earlier roles moving forward to Black Panther, and then you see that final role in Ma Rainey. I think it makes it evident his passion for what he did, and I think his passion is evident in each and every one of his roles. I think his what he felt and the fiery expression in which he expressed himself in each of the roles. I think it's like I said, I think it's evident in how he felt, and I think it's evident in his convictions, and I think he did an awesome job. I think he's an awesome dude. I really do. And in many ways, like you say, I think he's cut from the same cloth as Jackie Robinson. I think that you can feel that in each one of his roles, and at a certain point in each one of his movies, maybe with the exception of Get On Up and 21 Bridges, I can say I was moved to tears in each one of his movies, just from the passion that he put forth in the roles. And I think that I want to say that I don't want to say that we were robbed of a long career with him in it, because I think that he put forth 110% of everything he had in each one of his roles. But I can say that I wish there was more of him, and I wish that we had more of his roles. But what he did leave behind was something that was impactful. He changed the course of history with his roles, and I think that his energy and his passion is felt in each and single one of each and one of the people that he chose to put forth in film. He made a significant impact in history. And I think that each one of us is better for it. I at least feel that he made an impact on me and educated me and let me know what it was like to be a Black person in America. And I don't know. He made a real significant, lasting impact on me. Whether, and not just in film, but just in general. And so I couldn't be more thankful for him as a person. And it's it's fucking good. He did what an awesome career he had. I struggle to find the words, so that's all I'm going to say about that.
Well, I guess I'll just
one wine bottle in.
Well, I guess I'll just add a few of my own. I think you really, again, you hit the mark, I think, with a lot of your comments. He put everything that he had into every role that he had. Maybe Gods of Egypt aside, can't speak for that. But in terms of what I have seen, he really gave it his all. And, in the case of something like 42, bringing Jackie Robinson to life, like just an astonishing performance in a really good movie. And you track that career progression and get on up, and I mean, man, just again a transformative role in that James Brown role, and bringing Thurgood Marshall to life, and then bringing the fucking Black Panther to life. Bringing T'Challa to life. Just awe-inspiring stuff. And then even 21 Bridges, not the best movie, and Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. You think, okay, whatever, it's a good movie, it's a play, whatever you want to say about it. The thing is, this man struggled with cancer and lost his life to that cancer battle over the course of 4 years. All the while, he made movie after movie, still continuing to put himself into everything, still continuing to put everything into those roles. Even while, between takes, he's feeling the pain, of having to deal with cancer, I don't know what that's like. I can't imagine what that's like. But I know that it takes a very special kind of person to be able to still put everything that you have into the thing you love to do, the thing that you want to do, and the thing you want to share with people. And that's what actors do, is they put themselves into these roles and they share it with people and change people's lives in their own sort of way. And, he did kind of ascend into that mythical, historical kind of figure, like some of those others, through taking on that role of T'Challa and what that means for representation in this country, particularly. Like, it's really something. It's really something. It is kind of, that's even understating it. It's huge. It's really huge. Kind of what he did, and showing on such a grand scale, how hungry audiences were for something of that nature, and how for so long we haven't really had anything like it. I mean, yeah, we got Blade, in the late 90s and stuff like that, but Black Panther, they chucked $200 million into making that movie, assembled an effectively all black cast, and just went to town with it, basically, and it was a huge, resounding success. Yeah, I just him just kind of, being that sort of, being the Black Panther, the kind of character that kind of represents, that kind of carries the torch of that sort of thing. It's just nothing short of inspiring. And for him to go what he did and go through everything that he did to bring us what he did, it's really, really impressive. And I do think it's a huge tragedy that he lost his life at such a young age. He was 43 when he lost his life, like, sorry, no one should die when they're 43 years old, I'm thrilled, and I will cherish kind of the performances that he brought us. But 43 is just too young, and it was such a shock when we found out. I mean, it was hard to process. It was literally hard to process. I mean, it's celebrity deaths do happen, obviously, and quite frequently at that. And sometimes they're shocking and unexpected, but this is kind of one for me in recent memory that just stuck with me and was just, it was just really difficult to process that, someone who had just dominated every performance that he had, who was this huge fixture in pop culture, and still is because of the Black Panther. It was just really hard to fathom that. It's hard to fathom a world where we move on with the Black Panther franchise, then Chadwick Boseman isn't there around to lead it. It's really is a shame. It really sucks. And I just, I wish we had more. I will always appreciate what he did for us. He didn't owe us anything. He didn't owe, what I mean. But he put himself into everything. He put everything he had into everything that he did, and just, set an example for the people like me, at least, who, I don't know, couldn't even dream of doing something like that. And, I know that the impact that he made on me, which is to say that the impact that he made on Black Americans everywhere, I don't know if I can fathom that myself. I don't know if I can. I don't know if it's in my position to
It's
even
hard to put into words.
Be able to say, what that means for people. But I do know that it was there. I do know that impact was felt, and I, as much as I wish we would get more out of him, and wish that he, was there to spend time with his family when he's not filming things. And, it's a huge loss. It really is a huge loss. And I think it's going to create a huge void for films moving forward. I think, there are plenty of talented Black men that can certainly step into roles that Chadwick maybe would have owned at one point, had he continued to live. But, no one's going to quite hit the mark that Chadwick did. You know what I mean? But the thing is, Chadwick is going to inspire those people to do it. It's the Jackie Robinson thing you mentioned of the kid. He's going to do that. He is the kind of character. He's the kind of actor who people are going to look back decades on. They're going to look back at his roles and think, shit, that guy was a huge fucking talent. And he changed people's lives. He did change people's lives, I think. So that's kind of what my rambly thoughts on Chadwick Boseman are at this point. I haven't drank a whole bottle of wine, but I did open a bottle of Old Rasputin, which, shall we say, is not a light beer. So anyway, I'm dedicating this Old Rasputin to our conversation on Chadwick Boseman and the legacy that he leaves behind, because it's really impressive. It's awe-inspiring. It's just, and it's unmistakable, just kind of what he did, unparalleled perhaps. So I think perhaps that's enough of us talking about Chadwick Boseman, and maybe this is a good opportunity to hear some other people's thoughts on Chadwick. So we're going to do a sort of new attempt at the listener's corner, which is to say that we've asked people to kind of record their thoughts about Chadwick Boseman in terms of the man, the performer, the performances that he gave us, anything that just kind of stuck out. And we've asked people to put their thoughts on the record. We often read out emails and stuff like that we get, but this is the kind of thing where I think it's more impactful to hear from people themselves, from people that much like we have now given 2 hours of our accounts of these 6 movies and his performances in them. I think it's important to hear from other people and kind of understand where they come, where they're coming from, and kind of how they felt about Chadwick Boseman as a performer. So, without further ado, here are some thoughts on Chadwick Boseman from some people that sent in their thoughts to us.
Hey, this is Henrique, longtime fan and listener of the podcast and sometimes guest. So, man, what can I say about Chadwick Boseman? When he passed, it was pretty shocking to me, and I think for the most of the world. We had been used to seeing him as such a strong figure in his movies, and he, of course, is an incredible actor, but also seemed like just generally a good guy, from all the press tours that he did and the inspiration he brought people. I mean, being a big Marvel fan myself, obviously the role of Black Panther was huge. And, to this day, I think it's probably the best Marvel movie. It's just so impactful what he and the rest of the crew did. And he really became a symbol as the Black Panther. I mean, aside from playing a ton of other iconic characters like this, he almost became larger than life, a part of pop culture with Wakanda Forever and everything. And man, he's going to be sorely missed, I'm sure, by the people who knew him personally, but by the whole world. I mean, the whole world knows and knew Chadwick Boseman, maybe as the Black Panther, maybe as someone else. But I think for anyone who wants to see a glimpse, I guess, of what he was like as a person too. There's some great interviews that he did, and one of them in particular where he is talking to some reporters about his experience on the Black Panther press tour, and he was talking to kids who had cancer and as a terminal diagnosis and knew they're going to die, and they were kind of fighting on just so they were able to see his movie. And that's, I think, impactful for anybody, but especially knowing that he was fighting cancer at the same time too. You know, none of us knew, but wow, what a strong guy. And to know that his last couple of roles were literally at his end stages fighting cancer. What an amazing person who's going to be sorely missed, I think, from Hollywood and the world. I think that Marvel Studios will do him justice, and they've already said they're not recasting him in Black Panther, which is an impossible thing to do, and I think it's the right thing to do. I don't know where they take the story, but I think it's the respectful thing to do for him. So I'm looking forward to watching Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, but it's going to be tough knowing that it's one of his last new movies or features that we're going to see. So, you know, rest in peace, Chadwick. Rest in peace, the King. That's all I got to say.
This is Watch, Review, Repeat correspondent Mattis reporting for the Chadwick Boseman tribute episode. I watched all 6 of these films along with Colton as he watched them, so I had a lot of thoughts and probably some of the same ones as he did. But I think I also was throughout that thinking back to Da 5 Bloods, because that was the last movie I'd seen of Chadwick's before he died. And it felt really fitting because so much of that movie is about the other characters missing his character and his, you know, tragic death at a young age. So it felt really fitting. And that was before we knew, or at least before I did, about Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, which I think is one of his best performances. And so in that way, it feels like a fitting final performance. I think the first 3 films that are addressed here, 42, Get On Up, and Marshall, are all movies where Chadwick is playing this iconic figure, these legendary men, and also different. I think Jackie Robinson feels the most familiar, at least in personality, in a lot of ways. Just, I think especially the dugout hallway scene just sticks with me, because I think Chadwick just so perfectly captured this man who was not being quiet because he was stoic or he didn't care, but because he didn't want to let them see how upset he was. And so getting to, you know, show that emotion just felt really powerful. I think Get On Up is a movie that intimidated me a bit with the length. And then when I first started, I wasn't really sure I'd finish because it felt just so chaotic. And I think it's a complicated person to portray because James Brown was not really a great person. And I think Chadwick just did an excellent job, you know, portraying this complicated person. And I think that is also just a fantastic performance. He clearly gave it his all. And I think looking back on it, now having seen Ma Rainey, really just, it feels very interesting to compare the 2 times that Viola Davis and Chadwick Boseman acted opposite each other, because they are quite different. Although in some ways similar, I think, besides the makeup for Viola Davis, but the kind of vibes of, you know, this kind of wiser, you know, older person, and Chadwick's character not needing her approval or anything like that. Marshall is a movie that I had seen shortly after it came out, but I appreciate more now as a law student, both the like historical significance and this powerful figure, but also just the courtroom scenes and the investigations. And I thought Chadwick did a great job in that, kind of as a snarky character who, you know, he's not the most approachable, and he's not He doesn't, hold Josh Gad's character's hand. He, expects more of him, which I think is an interesting dynamic and felt like something new. 21 Bridges is, to me, just a long Law and Order episode. I think Chadwick did a great job. I think some of the other acting was really strong. I think Sienna Miller was fucking terrible. And I think it would have been better if there was someone stronger opposite Chadwick who maybe wasn't trying to do some horrendous accent. Because the only time that his performance felt lessened to me is opposite hers, because hers just didn't feel authentic at all. Ma Rainey I've touched on a bit, but it just was kind of a wild ride. And I think it was quite clear from the beginning, that this is a play that is being adapted. But I think sometimes either when it's a play being adapted to a movie or an actor who's used to the stage, I think about Aladdin a lot as an example of this. And even a little bit Denzel in another August Wilson, play turn movie, Fences. Actors can sometimes overact because they're performing something that was made to be able to reach someone in the back of a room. And it's just a very different vibe. And I don't think Chadwick did that at all. The parts where he was extremely dramatic and felt big and loud, it didn't feel like it was overacted in the scene to me. It just felt like that was the character. It felt really natural to me. And I thought it was a kind of fitting in a different way as a final performance, because again, it felt tragic, but just an amazing performance and just a really good adaptation, I thought. And skipping back a little bit to Black Panther, I just think this is a role that I'll remember Chadwick for, because even though he played these legendary figures so well, I think in this case, he was T'Challa. I just appreciate so much his interpretation of the character and the things he was so dedicated to around T'Challa. I think reading about him choosing the accent and being very adamantly opposed to a British accent was so important. And I think he just understood this character and this story so well and did such a great job showing it. And I think looking back, obviously this movie is visually stunning. It has amazing costume and design. The music is fantastic, but it really is the performances that make it stand out. And most of those are, Chadwick's interactions with other people. I think T'Challa and Shuri, T'Challa and Okoye, these just stand out to me the most, and I think are the most enjoyable part of this movie. And it just makes me really sad that we won't get to see Chadwick as T'Challa again in Black Panther, but I look forward to What If, and even if it is just his voice talents, it's one more chance that we get to appreciate them and experience them.
Hello, Watch Review Repeat friends. James here from the Ink to Film podcast. I heard you're doing an episode celebrating the legacy of Chadwick Boseman, and I wanted to contribute. I personally became aware of Chadwick Boseman in 42, the story of Jackie Robinson, and I was blown away by what he brought to the role. Just very unexpected, and I didn't know if this was going to be a performance that was sort of a flash in the pan. It didn't feel like it because of the performance. It felt very special. Then he went on to play James Brown, Thurgood Marshall, and then Black Panther. And being a massive Marvel fan, I couldn't have been happier with the casting, but I also didn't really realize until the film came out how much the performance would change the world and what it would mean to so many people. He spent so much of his time working with many different people in many walks of life. He dedicated his time to worthy causes and telling stories that he felt were worth the effort and time. And I think that because of that, his legacy is going to continue forever. And I didn't watch Da 5 Bloods until after he passed, and it rocked me because of what the role was and knowing what he was going through while he was doing it. It's just haunting, and to see his courage in that way. I don't know anybody who could have really done that. It's it's unfathomable. It's just like one of the most impressive things, because he felt it was a worthy story to tell, and it was his life's work. I'm so impressed by him. It's left me reeling because he passed and so suddenly, and he wanted that privacy, but it really made it so that all of us mourned him together in that moment. And it was, I just, knowing the career he had ahead of him and the fact that like now his legacy, and it was probably always going to be this way, but his legacy will loom, I think, above every other performer working today, just because of what he spent his time on and the causes that he was working on. He was so much a humanitarian, and what he meant to so many people, and basically just being the first Black superhero to have a standalone film in this Marvel Cinematic Universe. It was such a massive movement and such a massive moment for everyone. I remember going to see it in theaters and how it was $1 billion movie. Like, it changed the world. It's going to be really tough to not see him going forward. But he was the perfect Black Panther. Wakanda forever. And
so that does it. I think for our coverage here, for our special on Chadwick Boseman, for these 6 films, for the legacy that Chadwick leaves behind after 43 years of age, after just a really, really impressive filmography for that short time that he was there to gift us performances. They were gifts, you know what I mean? So anyway, I think we can go ahead and wrap it up then. What do you think?
Yeah, let's wrap it up.
All right. Thank you all for listening. If you enjoyed what you heard, please spread the word. We're on Patreon, patreon.com/watchreviewrepeat. If you want to get access to all of our regular episodes on an early basis, or timed exclusive access to all of our bonus episodes that are forthcoming. TBD on what's coming since we just dropped Tenet, but we'll figure it out. Our website's watchreviewrepeat.com. You can follow us on Twitter at WRRPod. You can like us on Facebook if you just want to search for Watch Review Repeat. If you have any questions, comments, and suggestions for a regular edition of the Listener's Corner, or more traditional version of it anyway, just send those our way, watchreviewrepeat@gmail.com. Our intro and outro track is Mechanolith by Kevin MacLeod, licensed under the Creative Commons by Attribution 3.0 license. And our next episode, we are finally winding down and saying sayonara to 2020. We're going to be doing our year in review of 2020 and all the Netflix movies that we watched. So it'll be a little different, I think, than usual, but it'll be good, maybe cathartic to kind of go back and put it in the rear view mirror.
On 2020. We're going to shit on 2020. All over that. That's what we're going to do.
That might be accurate.
That's what I'm going to do anyways. I don't know about you, but...
So anyway, catch us then. And Andrew will take you out now.
Yeah!